So we're going into Luke chapter 20, and we realize that in 19 he has this, what we know as the triumphal entry. And here he is coming into Jerusalem, and the people are accepting him as Messiah. He comes in on this colt, and he's riding a colt, which is the foal, which is a very young animal. The idea of humility. When kings came in, they came in the big horses and the pomp and all of this. And then came the major servants, and then it trickled down to the lowliest of servants would be on the colt, the smallest of animals. Here he comes in. The people accept him as Messiah, but the chief priest and the Sadducees and the scribes push against him. He goes and he cleanses the temple. We read about that here. He says that it is written, my house is a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of thieves. He's calling them thieves. This is major. We don't see this as Christians, how major this is. And like I'm saying, when you read this, stop and see what's being said. We kind of glaze over it. You know, a scripture day to keep the devil away kind of thing. Really realize what he's saying to them and how angry they would be. They've also lost all this revenue. Here he is in other gospels. It talks about throwing a whip and running them out. He's creating pain. There's uproars. Coins and animals are going everywhere. And people are just grabbing for what they want. There's so much loss here. Yes, he's making enemies. They come and challenge his authority, trying to pull back from the power that he's getting from the people. And he goes, well, they're asking him, where do you get your authority? He goes, well, before I tell you, let's talk about John. His baptism, was it from heaven or men? Because he knew how to turn it back on them. And they're like, well, if we say from men, we'll get stoned because the people think he's a prophet. If we say from God, he'll say with him. He goes, why didn't you follow him? You know. So they go, we don't know. And he goes, well, if you can't answer my question, I can't answer yours. He does the parable of the husbandman. And this one I've covered in the other two Gospels. But here he's got this, where this man had his husbandman take care of a vineyard. And it turns out they're going to want the vineyard. And so when his season came, he sent his servants to go, and they beat the servants and sent them back. He sent more, and they were treated shamefully, and some of them were even murdered. And so he goes, well, I'm going to send my son. Surely they will revere the son. So this man that had owned this vineyard and hired it out that these husbandmen take care of, they think, you know, if we kill the son, we can inherit this vineyard. Well, how stupid is that? You kill the son, you don't inherit because you kill the son. You don't get to keep this just because you keep it away from the true inheritor. You know. So it says that here that this man sent a servant and they beat him and entreated him. And he said, well, I'll send my beloved son, and they'll revere him. But then this husbandman saw him, and they reasoned that they would kill the heir, and the inheritance would be theirs. Like I said, stupid thing. So they killed him, and he asked the question to the Pharisees, well, what do you think this man what's going to happen next? And they said, well, he'll kill them. He'll come in and wipe them out. And because it said, isn't it written that the stone that the builders rejected, the same will be the corner? Whoever shall fall on this stone shall be broken, but whoever shall fall on it, it will grind him to powder. You need to be careful. This stone is coming. And if you fall upon it, you'll be broken. But if it falls on you, it's going to grind hard. So that's what Jesus is going to be to them. And this parable, interesting. This is the only parable that has no transformative power. Other parables have transformation or the sharing of information. But here there's nothing transformative. You had, the lost sheep was found. You had the lost coin found. You had the prodigal son comes back to the father. Here there's no transformation. He's just doing this to show them and to tick them off. He's setting up his own murder, if you will. He is pushing the buttons. These people didn't act really on their own. He was guiding this. This was his choice from the beginning. Going to the cross was not an accident. He didn't just accidentally trip one day and find himself on a cross. He instigates it here. He's making them upset. Why didn't he cast out the house when he says it's a house of prayer? Why didn't he cast them out before? Because he says, my time hasn't come. But now his time has come. They're trying to trick him with all kinds of things. They bring out the coins and says, should we give tribute to Caesar? They're trying to trip him up. They want him to speak against Caesar. They think, should we pay taxes? Should we do this or that? And he goes, well, they ask, is it lawful us to give tribute to Caesar or no? That's supposedly a trick question. If you say yes, you're instigating. you're seditious. You're going against Caesar. If you say no, if you say yes, you're not being seditious. If you say no, you're being seditious. You know, which one is it? And he goes, well, look, let me see the coin. Render to Caesar what's Caesar, and render to God what's God. Very, very important. He really catches these guys. They think they can catch him, but they don't. The Sadducees come up here, and they are going to be all smarty smart, you know, and they're going to kind of smooth him. They call him master. Master, oh rabbi, oh thoughtful one. They're really smoothing him here. They talk about, they give this hypothetical of a man who has a wife, and Moses said that if the man didn't have any children by that wife, that the next son, the next brother should bear children for that first brother, and this should go down. And so they're making up this hypothetical that a man had a wife, he died, and each brother died, of 7 brothers died before they could get an heir for the first brother, you know. And so we see the 7 brethren, and the first took the wife and died, and the second took the wife, and he goes down, third took the wife, and they all died, and the last the woman's died. Whose wife will she be? You know, it's really trying to trip him up there. This is why I push away from hypotheticals. They're usually set up to trap you. A hypothetical is always a trap. If you see that, then pull out of the trap before it gets sprung on you. He goes, you don't know the scriptures. I love that. He does that. He goes, the children of this, he goes, therefore in the resurrection they ask, whose wife shall it be? And he answered, saying, the children of the world marry and given in marriage, but those that are accountable shall be worthy to obtain the world and the resurrection from the dead, neither marry nor given in marriage. He goes, you don't even know what you're talking about. Of course, they didn't even believe in resurrection, but you don't know what you're talking about. You know, that in the future, there will, that realm, there will be neither marrying or giving in marriage. So also will be like the angels. And of the children of God, being the children of the resurrection. When the dead are raised, even Moses showed at the bush that he called the Lord the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He's the Lord of the living, not the Lord of the dead. And here, there is more coming up. And he starts questioning them. Sorry, I was looking ahead to my notes. He starts questioning them. How do you say that Christ is David's son? David said, the Lord said unto my Lord, sit on the right hand, until I make your enemies the footstool. How can David say to the Lord when he, you know, if David called him Lord, how can he be his son? I mean, they didn't even understand their own gospel. They didn't even understand their own scriptures. I love what he says here. He talks about the widow's mite in 21, which was very revealing. He sees this woman give just 2 bits in. And he said, of a truth I say that this poor widow has cast in more than they all did, for they gave out of their abundance, but she gave out of all she had. So the idea that this widow gave more than all the other people that had given before her. And he's got all these bombastic ideas at the time that really set people on their ears, really to rethink values. And so he talks about signs of the ends of the age, saying, you know, when he's at the temple, they were asking him, you know, and they were looking at the temple and saying, aren't these beautiful? And he goes, yeah, but there'll come a time when there's not one stone thrown upon another. Master, what will the signs be of the end times? And what shall these signs be? We're connecting again with Mark and Matthew that we've covered, where he talks about end times. Of course, the thing was take heed and be not deceived. Many will come saying, I am in Christ. They'll go here, go there, and you're not supposed to go. You'll hear of wars and commotions, but don't be terrified. There were things that come to pass, but the end has not yet come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and great earthquakes in diverse places, and famines and pestilence and fearful signs in the heavens. But before all these, they will lay hands on you and persecute you, delivering you into the synagogues. I love it that Jesus is giving them a 411 of the future. And it helps us as Christians to know that he's telling us to be prepared for these things. He doesn't just leave us out here with no knowledge. That's what the rest of this is, basically. It's foreknowledge for things that are on their way. And if we understand that, then we can be more prepared in the spirit to face these things. And you're going to go into prison and before kings and rulers for my name's sake. Settle it therefore in your hearts, not to meditate with what you'll say. I'll give every man according to, I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries will not be able to gainsay. That doesn't mean you shouldn't study. The more word you study, the more word he can pull out of you. The better your vocabulary will be that day. This is a language lesson. This whole thing that I started 1.5 years ago is a language lesson, the language of God. And if you can speak the language of God, then when these times come, you're not going to get this just by magic, where you'll magically speak. You have to know the language to speak the language. So spend your time learning the language, so when it does come time for you to speak the language, you can speak it. He can't pull out what you don't put in. You know, it says here that, but don't sit here and try to answer it all ahead of time. Here's what I'm going to say if they say this. Here's what I'm going to say if they say that. That's not what he's saying. Settle in your heart not to meditate. You know, not sit there, I'm going to build this answer. If someone asks me about this, here's my answer. If somebody asks me about this, here's my answer. And so, and you'll be betrayed by parents and by brethren and kinsfolks, and you'll be hated by all men. Here's the church trying to be all fancy and smancy, and we're going to, you know, seeker friendly, and we're going to make sure you have a happy day, when the Bible says you're going to be hated. But in your patience possess your souls. And when you see Jerusalem encompassed with armies, and the desolation draweth nigh, let that are in Jerusalem flee to the mountains, and let them in the midst of it depart out of. I think that's dualistic. I think he's talking about 70 AD, but he's also talking about later on. You know, when there is an encompassing of Jerusalem. For these be the days of vengeance. See, the days of vengeance is coming. Yes, there was a certain level of vengeance that came with both falls of Jerusalem, but there's a day of vengeance coming where God will avenge how people have treated people and how people have treated him. Remember, when we get to the book of Acts, how that he said to Saul, who later became Paul, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? I know I broke my rule. I went ahead. All right. Did it one time or two or three, but I try not to do it too often. Going back. The day of vengeance is coming. We saw that. We saw that when we talked about when Jesus spoke, when he read in the synagogue, he stopped at the day of vengeance. But that day of vengeance is coming. He will avenge. He talks about woe to them that were with child in those days. And many will fall by the edge of the sword and be held captive of all nations. Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is filled. Jerusalem will be trodden down. And what it is, if you look at Jerusalem today, it does look like a trodden down city. All these old rocks and all these old temples and old buildings. And it looks very old and kind of run down. It doesn't have any sleek beauty like it used to. You get the idea that when Jesus comes, he's going to make this thing beautiful. It's going to look even better than it did at the time of Hezekiah or at the time of Solomon or David. Especially Solomon, since he, set up the temple. And there'll be signs in the suns and the moons and the stars and the earth. And there will be distress of the nations and perplexities. Men's hearts will fail them for fear, looking at things that are coming on the earth. And when they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and glory, and these things shall come to pass, then look up, for your redemption draws nigh. All of this stuff you have to reread. I almost don't want to go. I'd like to go into this very much in detail. But I want to leave that joy for you. The goal of this is not, like I said, it's not to hit every jot and tittle. That's why I get a little tongue-tied sometimes, because I want to say more, but I don't want to rob you of that joy of getting in here. He spoke to them in a parable. Behold the fig tree. When you see its roots come forth, you'll know that summer's nigh. When you see these things happening, this isn't that Jerusalem is the fig tree. We get that. Some people say, well, Jerusalem's a fig tree. No, it's not. It's just using that as an analogy. When you see a fig tree bloom, it's getting close to summer. When you see these things happening, then you'll see this is coming. This generation will not pass away. And I believe that's the generation, we're still in that generation. We're still tied to people who are tied to that land, to that day. It's thought of as like if I die and all my brothers died, and my dad was the last one of his line, if we died, then the generation is over, right? There's still the people attached to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob on this planet That generation will not pass away. You will not wipe out all of the physical remnants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what I think he's talking about. Because there are groups that have had broken away. There are groups that have died. We're the Moabites. We're the Ammonites. We're these, the Perizzites and all these other ites, Canaanites. Their generations stopped and other people just filled in the gap. See, I'm going with that because some people go, well, that's 40 years and all this kind of stuff. You have to kind of lean in a little bit to the scriptures. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words will not pass away. Take heed yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with drunkenness and the cares of this world. You'll be overcharged. You'll get involved with the stuff of this world and not in stuff of him. Take heed to yourself. That's your responsibility. Take heed to yourself. That's your responsibility. Watch, therefore. Ooh, here's another one. Watch. He's telling you, take heed and watch. This doesn't mean sit around and let the pastor do all the work and do all your thinking for you. You're to take heed. You're to watch, therefore, and pray always that you will be counted worthy to escape. Do you want to escape these times? Or do you want to sit around and just whatever happens, la-di-da, some case sarah, whatever happens, happens? You can escape these times. You don't have to go through these times. That you can be counted worthy to escape. And all these things shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And in that day he taught in the temple, night and at night he went out and abode in the mount called the Mount of Olives. So we're finishing with, again, we've had the triumphal entry, and then we moved through and we did the cleansing of the temple. Now we're pushing more towards what we call the Olivet Discourse. We're going to get to the Last Supper. Then we get to, the crucifixion and then the resurrection. Things are coming to a head. But we need to see all these things that he's saying and how he's saying it and how he's trying to bring people about in clear understanding. You have things to do. Take heed and watch. Don't just sit around. Take heed and watch.